85. Oh, same thing with Rabbi Gold upstairs. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we're on the bottom of 74b, and we're middle of a sugya. It's going on to the psukim. Just to remember, yesterday we ended off. Just to remember, should we have the halachas? The halacha was that Mishnah that said earlier that after a person is tummy, he goes to the mikveh. He's called it full yom. He's not eat ma'aser sheni, but cannot eat yet truma until he has hair of shemesh, until the nightfall, and then kachim he cannot eat until he brings his korban if he has to. So we're in the middle of that, and the Gemara had utilized the pasuk in Parshas Tazria where it talks about Ayoledes was have to be a korban. From there, the Gemara learned out that these halachas about for truma it's mutter to eat after nightfall and kachim until after a korban, and that's where the Gemara continues now. 6 lines in the bottom. How could you learn that psukim over there by Parshas Tazria by Ayoledes, a woman after childbirth? That is talking about Truma. But Tanya, Dabo B'nai Yisrael, over there, at the beginning of the parsha by Tazria, it says, speak to B'nai Yisrael. Only El B'nai Yisrael, Gyeros V'shivchom V'shaperos B'nayim. Tamad Lomar Isha. Over there, B'nai Yisrael usually means B'nai Yisrael were born Jewish. And the Gemara has a special riboy to say it's talking about also about a convert, a woman convert, or Shivchom V'shaperos, that she was a maidservant and she became freed, which is the same level as the convert. And that's also included in the parsha of Yoledes. So Yoledes also a woman who's a Gyoris, of course, and also even a Shifcha. Tesha says even not Meshacheres, even a Shifcha, she also has the dinim of a Yoledes. She has the same halachas. So it says the parsha, but there's also talking about these people, and there's no such thing as a Gyoris or a Shifcha Meshacheres eating truma. How could you say the pasuk over there is talking about truma? These people are not eligible for truma in the first place, because that's the first thing to eat truma has to be a kohen. Then we can talk further. And the Gyoris is not a kohen. Her father is not a kohen; she wouldn't be a gyoris. And also the case of the shivcha meshacheres, she's also not eating truma. So that's the Gemara's attack. How could you say these psukim are talking about different levels of how much Torah she is in order to eat truma? We're not talking about it. They can talk about karbanos. So then they also could eat karbanos, but to eat truma, you have to be a kohen, and these people are not kohenim. The females are also right. They wouldn't be eating truma. Right, they wouldn't be eating truma. They wouldn't be eating truma. The case that a female could eat truma, but yours they can't. Rava says that you also have to agree. The pasuk is talking about truma over there. Also over there in Parshas Tazria, it says she shouldn't touch kodesh, and based on the drash, the Rabbah said truma. There's a drash that says over there it's talking about truma, so you also have to agree it's talking about truma. So you have a kasha. We have to figure out the answer, but everyone agrees that the parsha is talking about truma also. What do you do with this kasha that we said that it's coming to also talk about a gyoris and a shivchom shakreres? They're not eating truma. The pasuk is talking about different things. I think the answer means to say that even though some aspects will only be talking about truma, which only doesn't apply to gyoris, but it tells you that whatever applies to gyoris applies, whatever doesn't. So the main aspect of the pasuk is talking about that they have to bring a korban. You let this brings a korban. That applies to a gyoris and a shifta also. The details that it says that truma, when at what time they can eat truma, that won't be relevant to a gyoris. But the pasuk still could be talking about truma. The Gemara answers the question, even though not every detail of the parsha is going to be relevant to a gyoris, but whatever is, whatever is not.
For gyoris, who brings the korban?
What's the question?
For shifcha.
A shifcha, so she's having a korban. What's the question?
Who pays for it?
Who pays for it? Okay, that'll be a question in maybe in a different masechta. Who's responsible to pay for the korban? Okay, the Gemara talks about also in general a woman. Does the husband have to pay for her korbanos also? I think it's also a subject. Okay, now the Gemara continues. But now we collected a couple of psukim, all talking about truma, and the Gemara wants to know why you need all these psukim for. I just highlighted the 3 psukim. One is Ad Asher Torah, and that's talking about. And also Vashemesh V'Tara. I think these psukim are talking about in Parshas Emor, where it talks about different levels of Torah, and that's going to be a third pasuk. Ad Malosh Yemei Torah is talking about Parshas Tazria by the Yoledes. So altogether, the Gemara listed 3 psukim that have to do with Tahara in order to be able to eat truma. Why do you need 3 psukim that say the same thing? Just to remember again, to recall, we're talking about that truma, a person is not allowed to eat truma after the tamei until they went to the mikvah, and also nightfall came. And we have 3 psukim that we're utilizing to figure that out. How can we need so many psukim? with Lasik Troy Betruma Lomli. Why do you need 3 psukim? Tzrichi need all 3 psukim. It says don't need truma until they become Torah. But I don't know what level of Torah. There are different levels of Torah. There's mikvah, there's nightfall, there's korbanos. So you have to know Adashay Torah. You still want to know what level of that. That's why the pasuk says when nightfall comes, then he's Torah. That means that's the level of Tahara that you need in order to eat truma that the nightfall came. Because the lav bar kapora, about the bar kapora, ema ad the kapora. I might think that means if there's a kind of a tumah which doesn't need a korban, so then it's not enough to have mikvah. You have to also have nightfall, have shemesh. But if you need a kapora, if it's a kind of a tumah which needs a korban, maybe you have to wait till you bring the korban also. Maybe a mechusar kapora is not allowed to eat truma either. Because Rahman ad Moshe Torah to say that there's an aspect of eating truma even if the Moshe made Torah that the time is over and she had to have shemesh, even though she didn't bring the korban yet. So we need all 3 psukim. How come you don't just say the last pasuk? Because of Rahman ad Moshe, I may not feel below tefillah. Because Rahman ad Sheyito. You might think that once the time is over, that the days are over, 80 days, she has to wait 80 days after, or 40 days, depending if it's a boy or a girl. So you might think that she doesn't even run out the mikvah. You might think it doesn't say mikvah. So you have to have the pasuk that says that would mean that you also have to have mikvah also. So it comes out, this was the drushes, but as far as the halacha, it stays the same as we said, that for Meiser again, after a person went to the mikvah, they're allowed to eat Meiser Sheni, even though it's only at full yom. At night, have shemesh, then they're allowed to eat truma. And then if they are chayiv a korban, they can't eat kachim until they brought the korban. So we just had the drush over here, why you have to have all the psukim. Before we mentioned that the pasuk over there, when it says in Parashas Emor, where it says, Ish Mizar Aaron, Hutzaru Azav, because the Shem Lo Yochal Ad Sheyitor. So we said that it's talking about what kind of Tzaru Azav. Tzaru is a Mitzorah. Azav is some kind of an emission. And as far as a Mitzorah, there are 2 kinds of Mitzorah. One is when he's in quarantine, and one is when he's actually, the verdict came that he's going to be Mukhlat, he's a definite Mitzorah. So the one Mitzorah Musga doesn't have any Karbanis. The Karbanis is only by Mitzorah after he'd been decided that he's a Mitzorah. Also by Zav, there are 2 kinds of Zav. How many emissions that he had of this is some kind of a inflammation that causes a flow, not semen, it's not semen, but it's zav. Zav means the flow. So also it says over there that there are 2, depends how many emissions he had. And then there's the whole Masechta about it called Masechta Zavim, but for our purposes, 2 emissions makes him tamei, but not to the level of bringing a korban. And only a zav al shalosh means a korban. Before the Brisa said that the pasuk was talking about somebody without a korban. It's talking about the Mitzorah who's not bringing a korban and the Zav was not bringing a korban. And then we spoke about his opinion. But now the Gemara says that someone argues on that. There is a different opinion how to learn the psukim over there. Some say the pasuk over there about Ish Mizar Aaron Hutzaru Zav. It's talking about a kind of a tamei that does need a korban. So Mitzav means he saw 3 times already. And the Masor means he's a Masor Muchlop, which means that he's bringing a korban now. And when it says he can't eat until Adash Yitor, it means until he brings his kapara, until he brings the korban. Before the Gemara said it's talking about somebody that doesn't need a korban at all. This time learns that it's talking about somebody that does need a korban and he can't eat kachim until he brings the korban. And it's not talking about truma, because truma you're allowed to eat even if you don't bring a korban. Even have shemesh is enough. So the Gemara asks according to him, why do you need both the 2 psukim, which is going to be one by Yoledas and one by Yozav, means we brought a pasuk in Parshas Tazria, where it talks about a woman after birth, that she is not allowed to eat kachim until she brings the korban. And also by Yozav, this pasuk we're saying now is talking about also someone who brings the korban, and he cannot eat kachim until he brings the korban. So the Gemara is in the drasha world. We're not talking about the halachas all stay the same, but we're just dashing the psukim. How come you have to have 2 psukim for the same din? That a person who has to bring a korban, they're not allowed to eat the kachim until they bring the korban. Why do you need 2 psukim that say the same thing? One's talking about a woman after childbirth, and one's talking about a zav. The halacha should be the same. The Gemara answers trichi. Because Rahman be Yoledas, Mishum Demruba Tamasa, Ava Bazav Emalo. Because Rahman Bazav, the Lotam Mechlalo, Ava Yoledas Emalo Tzricha. Whenever the Gemara does this, it tries to find a severity in each one that you wouldn't know one from the other. Even though by one of them, one kind of a tumah, it would say that they can't eat karbanas, they can't touch them until they brought their korban. So you wouldn't be able to learn out the other one, because this one is more severe. So you have 2 things over here. One is the Yoledas, a woman after childbirth, that she has to bring a korban, and she can't eat kachim until after she brought the korban. And she can't eat, right? And the other one is going to be by a zav. What do you find? A chumrah of each one. So the Gemara says you can find a chumrah of each one. Yoledas, a woman after childbirth, that's a very big tumah. After a woman gives birth, she's not allowed to eat, she's coming for 80 days. 80 days, 40 days, depends if it's a boy or a girl. That's a very long time. A zav doesn't have such a long time. So you might think that a woman who's tummy such a long time, over there's a chumrah, there's also a severity, a stringency that she not allowed to eat, even after she goes to the mikveh and has to have shemesh, she still has to wait until she brings the korban. But a zav doesn't have such a big tumah, so maybe over there they don't have that stringency. Because that is zav when he's tummy, and there's no there's no exception to his tumah. But by a woman, there is something that is more lenient that usually we wouldn't find. And that is that a woman after childbirth, so she's by a woman after she gives birth to a girl, so she's tummy for 14 days, and that would make her all tummy, all that. And then she's going to be allowed to have relations with. She goes to the mikveh, and she's allowed to have relations for the next 66 days, but she can't eat truma. But to her husband, is allowed to have relations. Nowadays, it isn't the custom, but minadin, the halacha would be that dam tara is called Torah blood. Even though there's blood, usually we say menstrual blood, everything is tummy. But after childbirth, there's a 66 period time that she would be allowed to have relations. Of course, she has to go to the mikveh after the childbirth, but then there'd be 66 days that she'd be allowed to have relations. Or if it was a son that she gave birth to, then it will be 7 days of tumah, and then 33 days of this period that she would be allowed to have relations and not eat truma. But that's something that you see that there's really blood, and still we're going to say that it's Torah in some aspect. Again, nowadays that's not the custom, but minadin would have been mutter. Anyway, by Yazav you don't have that, by Yoledis you do. So you wouldn't, even if it was say the din by Yazav, there's not allowed to eat kachim until after you bought his kapara, you wouldn't have known until Yoledis. Maybe Yoledis is more lenient. Let's find the other leniencies. That's why I need both psukim. So we finished explaining how come we need the psukim over there. Also, again, the halacha is not changing. The halacha stays the same. It's kedai just to chazer over this thing 10 times, even if we're not going to get all the drushes. That after you went to the mikvah, he's allowed to eat ma'aser sheni. After if you know this balpeh already, you know this by heart. After the mikvah, you go to eat ma'aser sheni. After nightfall, he's allowed to eat truma, and he can't eat karbanos until after he brings his korban. If he's chayiv a korban like a zav and a yoledes. There was one more problem with the psukim. It says v'mayim yuva v'tamei da'arev. This is a pasuk in Parsha Shmini, and it's talking about a sheretz, one of the 8 rodents. There are certain rodents, a mouse, a weasel. Over there it says the chola, the achbar. There are 8 shvatzim that when they die, they give off tumah. That's called tumah shvatzim. And over there it says that if it touches a kli, it touches in front of a vessel, so it becomes tamei. The vessel becomes tamei. The sheretz says ava tumah, and the kli now is a rishon, and you have to put it into the mikvah. The ma'im yuva, it should be brought into water. That's a mikvah, and it's tamei until the evening, and then it becomes tahor. There's one more pasuk, one more word in the pasuk, the toher. It says v'ma'im yuva v'tamei da'arev. The toher, it should be brought into the mikvah, and it's tamei until the evening. Means even though it went to the mikvah, it's only its full yom. You have to wait until the nightfall, and then it becomes tahor. And that pasuk is another pasuk about the tumah of truma that you have to wait until evening. Why do you need another pasuk? It means the Gemara is asking, you have so many pasukim for the same thing. On Reb Zera Linagia, there's coming to say that there's also a stringency, not only that a person who's went to the mikvah, he was tamei, and he went to the mikvah, and it's not yet nightfall, he's not allowed to eat truma. But that is another halacha that he's not allowed to touch truma. It means that the truma is vulnerable to become tamei from a person who's at full yom. A person who is tamei, he went to the mikvah, so now he's tahor. He went to the mikvah, but it's not fully tahor yet. And if he would touch truma, he would contaminate the truma. So he wouldn't have known that until now. Until now, we just said he's not allowed to eat it. It's considered a little bit tamei. He's not allowed to eat the truma. Now we're saying a bigger chiddush that he also contaminates the truma if he touches it before nightfall. The Tanya, the tamei. This pasuk says v'avam yuva v'tamei adarev, and then it says v'toher. It would be nice to have the extra word v'toher, that he's tamei until the night, and then it becomes tahor. But the Gemara is going to say a twist in the drasha, a twist in the pasuk that the tamei adarev and also the toher adarev, as if to say that after he went to the mikveh, even before nightfall, in some ways he's tamei, in some ways he's tahor. If it would say v'tamei yachal kol tamadama v'toher, ivato yachal kol tamadama v'tamei. On one hand, the pasuk calls him tahor after he went to the mikveh. In the drash world, of course, in the pshat world, he's only tahor at nightfall. But you could read the pasuk that says that he's tamei until the evening, and he's also tahor till the evening. So that's a contradiction. Is he tamei or tahor? So if it would say tamei, you'd think completely, no, it says v'toher, he's tahor. You have to went to the mikvah. If it says v'toher, you might think completely, no, it says v'tamei. How do you reconcile this? Is he tamei or tahor? Okay, it's kan la ma'aser, kan la truma. That for ma'aser, he's tahor after he went to the mikvah, which we just chazed 10 times already. That for ma'aser, he's allowed to eat after he went to the mikvah, but truma till nightfall. He's still considered tamei after the mikvah until nightfall. How do you know? And since we're talking about negia, we're gonna be talking about the kli. The kli here is not. No one's eating anything. The kli was touched by a sheretz, so now we're talking about if the kli is going to touch truma or not. So after it went to the mikvah, it touched ma'aser, nothing happens. But if it touches truma, it contaminates it. How do you know which one is more, the truma or the meiser? Maybe the meiser is going to be contaminated before nightfall, and the truma not. Just like we figured out before on the page earlier that as far as eating, so then the person who is eating meiser is allowed to eat it after he went to the mikvah. So also probably the negia is not going to contaminate the touching, the contact of the tamei is not going to contaminate after it went to the mikvah. But the truma, which is more chomer as far as eating, that he can't eat it until the night. Also, if he touches if the tful yom touches the truma, it's also going to contaminate it. That the truma is more chomer than meiser. Another source I could tell you to learn out negia means we said that this pasuk was telling us that if a tful yom after the mikvah had contact with the truma, it also contaminates it. There's another source to learn that out, and that's the following brisa. Negia the truma mehacha nafka, the din that a tful yom after the mikvah before harav shemesh that it contaminates truma is learned out from the following drasha. It's going to take a couple of lines to get there, but it's also this is all a brisa. The Tanya b'chol kodesh lo siga. It's talking about a yoledis, a woman after birth, and it says that she shouldn't touch kodesh. So we're really looking for the nogea. We really want nogea. How do you know that even touching truma makes the truma contaminated? If the full yom, if the person after the mikvah, he touches the truma, he can't contaminated it. So that's what we're looking for. But the Brisa starts the other way. The Brisa says that this pasuk is not, even though it says lo siga, it says she should not touch any kodesh, which sounds like beferish, lo siga. The Gemara is going to make a drash and take us out of what we're looking for. We're really looking for that. And the Gemara is going to say the Brisa, the pasuk really means eating, and then we'll have a drash at the end to tell us how do you know that even contaminates by touching. Asar la'ochel, that the truth is this pasuk is coming to tell you that if she eats the truma, then it's a avera. Or maybe the pasuk says kipshuto that it's talking about touching. The pasuk goes together. It says she should not touch any kodesh and she should not come into the base of mikdash. But going into the base of mikdash is very severe. That makes avera. It's chayv kares. If someone goes into the makom mikdash when they're tamei, so they're chayv kares. Makish kodesh lo mikdash, and the pasuk puts together whatever this talks about. Touching the kodesh. Touching kodesh is not a chayv. That makes it tamei, but it doesn't make any avera. It doesn't make that the person is chayv kares for that. And the pasuk says that don't come into the base of mikdash and don't touch kodesh. It sounds like it's the same severity. Makish kodesh and mikdash. Ma mikdash jav sheish bo netilas and shama. Av kodesh jav sheish bo netilas and shama. Something which is death penalty, not what? The penalty is going to be something that's death. It doesn't mean that Bezdin kills him, but it means that heavenly death. But touching truma wouldn't make any avera. It only becomes contaminated. So it must be talking about eating. So when it says b'chol kodesh lo siga, it means not to eat the truma, which is chai misa b'dei shamayim. But now we get to the point that we're looking for. So it has to be something which should be in a tilas shama. There is no death penalty for touching truma. So now, but the Bryce ends off, or that the Bryce or the Gemara, really the pasuk says b'chol kodesh lo siga, and it means do not eat. But the fact that it uses the word touching and means eating, so why did it use a terminology that's not true? Why does it say tiga? To tell you that touching has the same severity, not as far as misa, but as far as that it contaminates it. So the same way that a full yom is not allowed to eat truma, also not allowed to touch truma. And if it touches truma, he does contaminate it. So that's the end of the sugi. We finished all about truma. One more time. After the mikvah, he's allowed to eat ma'aser sheni. After nightfall, he's allowed to eat truma. And kachim is only allowed to eat after he brings his korban, if he needs a korban. And here the Gemara also told some new information that a tvul yom after the mikvah, if he didn't have nightfall yet, so then he also would contaminate the truma. He's called the sheni. The tvul yom is called the sheni, and he would contaminate the truma. And now we go further in the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that Oro is not allowed to eat truma and the tummy is not allowed to eat truma. We have a big sugya for each one. And now we go on and talks about a B'tzua Daka and a Krush Shafcha. A B'tzua Daka and a Krush Shafcha is the first in Parashas Ki Seitze. Over there it talks about all the people that are not allowed to marry. And it has, besides all of the lineage things, Ammoni, Moavi, Mitzri, Adomi, all kinds of, and Mamzeres over there also not allowed to marry a Jewish girl, only a Gioris or another Mamzeres. So, or a Shekhem and Shekheres also. So it also says, What's a B'tzua Daka? So the Mishnah told us it means that his testicles were crushed testicles, damaged testicles. And Krush Shafcha is going to mean that the organ itself was damaged. And he's not allowed to marry. It's a isser. It's not only the fact that the Gemara is going to say it means he can't have children. It's damaged in the way that he can't give birth, and it's also to marry. So, and that would make, if they would have relations, so it's a bia psula, it's a chayv elaven, and the woman becomes puzzled for truma because she had relations with somebody she's not allowed to. But the Mishnah said, even if they were married, and it's a Cohen's wife, he became a Pasua Daka, he became damaged organ, so they're not allowed to have relations, but she's still his wife. So she would be allowed to eat truma because she's a Cohen's wife. If they had relations, now she became pasul. She became zona halala. She became pasul, and she's not allowed to eat truma anymore. But as long as they didn't have relations, they're married. So she would be allowed to eat truma because she's acquired by a Kohen, like any kind of acquisition. But the question the Mishnah is the Gemara is going to ask is that we had many pages ago that there's a concept called Mishtameres Labi Psula. Means that a woman who is destined, a better word than that, not destined. What's that?
She's in the waiting.
In the waiting for a relation which would passel her. But Meir over there said also she's not allowed to eat truma. If she's like Mishtameres, like in waiting, I guess that's the good word. In waiting.
She's guarded. She's a puka.
So I guess in waiting in English that would be the best way to say it. And in waiting for a Bia Psula, also she's not allowed to eat truma even before she had relations. And that's the Gemara's kasha now. This woman, which is married to a Kohen, Psula Daka, but means that the marriage that they have is that she would have relations with him, and that would make her puzzle. So even before she has relations, also she should be puzzled. That's the Gemara's kasha. We had a different case before. We're not going to go into all the details, but Rameir did say that concept. Mr. Meres, the Bia Psula, I'm one of the Kohen Gadol that was over there. So how could it be in our Mishnah that Mr. Meres, the Bia Psula, she's allowed to eat? So the truth is, in that Mishnah over there was machlokes. Rameir said that she cannot eat, she's puzzled to eat truma because she's in waiting of a Bia Psula makes her puzzle. Rabbi Lazar and Shimon said that she's mutter. So our Mishnah must be only like only Yaakov, Lazar, and Rabbi Shimon. I'm Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar is Rabbi Lazar and Amora.
Can you read the question, please?
Who's the Tana that says Mr. Meres, the Bia Psula, the Raisa may still eat? Who's the author?
Question.
Achla is the part of the quotation still. That's like saying a whole quotation. Who is the author that says, quote, Mr. Meres the Bia Psula, the Raisa Achla, that even though a woman who's in waiting of a Bia Psula, of a Bia Psula the Raisa, may still eat.
Question.
And the question, right, question mark because of the Montana. Who's the author who says the following? Right, good. I'm Rabbi Lazar, Machlok Tishnu.
If she's in Yevama, we're not getting to that.
No, Ivana. This is a woman who's married to somebody that if they would have the relation, it would be a Bia Psula. Even if they didn't have the relation yet, she's already puzzle teach from. Nothing to do with Shemez. I'm doing Shemez Yavam. She may eat truma. The case we had before was Amon of the Kohen Gadol, the Erison. Amon nothing to do with even. Amon of the Kohen Gadol, she's still allowed to eat truma even though she's in waiting for a Bia Psula. So I'm Rabbi Lazar, B'machok Kishnei, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimoni. And he doesn't go according to Rabbi Meir. The Rabbi Meir is the one who says Mr. Meres the Bia Psula the Raisa may not eat. Doesn't fit with our Mishnah. According to our Mishnah, the Mishnah says she could eat truma. This Kohen Psula Daka, even though if they'd have relations, he would passel her. As long as they didn't have relations, he's kosher. That only goes according to Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. According to Rabbi Meir, Taka would be passel. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, I feel with him, Rabbi Meir. He can even go according to Rabbi Meir, who says over there, Amon of the Kohen Gadol, she's waiting for a Bia Psula. She's not allowed to eat truma. This Mishnah is better. Even Rabbi Meir would agree that here she may. Why? Since she already did eat truma. We're not over there. The case was she's getting married for the first time. She's getting married to somebody that she's not allowed to. And when they consummate the marriage, it's going to make her puzzled. Even if they didn't have relations yet, she's already puzzled because it was the beginning, like getting permission, getting authorization. So you don't get authorization if she's somebody that would make her, that Bia is going to make her puzzled. But here she's already been married. She was eating. She was the Kohen's wife. She was eating truma. Now a problem arose. He became a kushavka, and now if they can have relations, it's going to be a Bia Psula. But since she started eating already before, so she doesn't lose the permission. She doesn't lose the authorization to eat, even though now she's on deck for a Bia Psula.
And he'd be on the side, Rabbi Meir would be on the side of Rabbi Lazar.
Right, he would agree over here. Usually he argues because she did not yet eat, and now to start eating, he says, Mr. Meres the Bia Psula doesn't eat, but if she already did eat, then he would agree that she's okay. Now Rabbi Lazar, this is Rabbi Lazar Amora. This is here. This gets a little confusing. There's Rabbi Lazar the Tan and there's Rabbi Lazar Amora. So going back to Rabbi Lazar, maybe to highlight that, there's what should I do over here? Yeah, Rabbi Lazar. There's Rabbi Lazar Amora said this. And he argued on. Well, they both without a yud. There's Rabbi Lazar ben Tabash, Rabbi Lazar ben Shah. They're also rabbis. They're also all rabbis.
They're all rabbis.
Rabbi and Rav, it depends if they were Eretz Yisrael to Gasmich or not. It could be a more also as a rabbi. And he had Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Yochanan are arguing if it's going according to Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon was going according to Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Elazar said it could even only be Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon. The Rabbi Yochanan said it could even be Rabbi Meir. Why does Rabbi Elazar, that same Rabbi Elazar over here, why doesn't he agree to Rabbi Yochanan to say this for about Shekfar Ochla? The answer is Shekfar Ochla lo Amina. He doesn't hold this for that is better since she once ate already, she was married to him already, and everything was going fine. That she's allowed to continue. The Ilo Teimachi, if you're going to say this for that having eaten before already allows you to continue, even though you lost the what we're holding now is not a reason that you should start. But if you started before already, you're allowed to continue. So then, Basis Rosh says the Kohen Umeis Bala Tochal Shekvar Ochla. You're going to say that the daughter of Israel, the Israelis, not a Bas Kohen, that she got married to a Kohen, she's allowed to eat truma. That's the regular din. That a Bas Israel marries a Kohen, she's allowed to eat truma. And then the husband died. I can say she's allowed to continue eating truma. The Pasuk says openly that she's not allowed to. Only as long as she's married. You're going to say Shekvar Ochla, that since once she was allowed to, she's allowed to continue even though the permission stopped. You don't say that. So there's no such law as Kvar Ochla. Rabbi Yochanan, Hasan Paki Kinyane, Yachal Paki Kinyane. Over there, after he dies, they're not married anymore. It's all over. But over here, they are married, and there's a problem that the problem about Meshemes to be a psula. So here, it would be a leniency about Shekvar Ochla. This whole Gemara has to be reconciled with the Gemara before, many pages ago. Over there, I spoke about the whole story about Shekvar Ochla in Rabbi Meir. Here the Gemara is going, here the Gemara in Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, here the Gemara is going according to Rabbi Meir. The two sugis seem to contradict a little bit each other, but for our purposes, what we get out of our Gemara is that this case of Psua Daka seems to be a case of Machlokas Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon against Rabbi Meir, because she is in waiting for a Bia Psula. Would that make her possible even before they had relations? The Mishnah says she's kosher. That might be only according to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, because they don't hold it a problem at all of Mishnah to be a Psula. And the issue in our Gemara is maybe Rabbi Meir also would agree over here because you have this svara of Shekvar Ochla. Rabbi Yochanan says that's a good svara. Rabbi Elazar says it's not. And then at Gemara,
What is the kinyan? What's the last thing?
Paki Kinyan means after her husband dies, so then she's not his acquisition anymore. So there, surely she loses the right to eat truma. But Paka means to what's the word for it? It expired, exploded. It's over. Okay, now the rest of the Gemara today is going to be talking about this halacha about a psua daka and a kush shafcha, that if the male organs are damaged, so it's also to marry. And even if he's married, it seems that he has to end the marriage. I don't know the halacha l'maisa about this. It shouldn't happen to anybody. So it's going to be very much about the anatomy of the organs and what's going to make him puzzle if it's damaged. So the person says about a Petsua Daka and a Kush Shofcha. The way the translation in the Gemara is going to say, the Mishnah said already before, Petsua Daka means the testicles, and the Kush Shofcha, the Shofcha is the organ itself. And both of them that are damaged, either one damaged is going to make him puzzle. And also the Gemara is going to talk about even they call it the spermatic cords, even the cords that connect, that the sperm should be able to travel from the testicles to the organ. That also, if it's damaged, also you also can't reproduce, procreate, and therefore also is puzzle. The word Petsua, yes? I'm sorry? The word Petsua Daka is not clear with the definition. A big problem in the Mepharshim what the word means. You don't see, it doesn't mean the word testicles over there. Petsua means crushed, smashed, and the Daka means crushed. Both of them mean the same, more or less the same thing. Crushed, smashed, and doesn't say the word testicles at all. So it could be that it's Torah Shabbat Peh. It could be as the oral law. It just says crushed. It doesn't say what it is. And I'm supposed to understand what the Chazal told us in the oral law that it means the testicles. The crushed what?
Daka.
No. Dach is like misgav ladach. Misgav ladach. Dach means not someone's crushed. That's not crushed. Both. That's what I'm saying. Both of them mean crushed. Crushed. So, but it doesn't say what. What's crushed? It doesn't say. So, unfortunately, I have difficulty with this.
Isn't Petsua a wound?
But then nowadays, I think, but the word pet says yes, but it means some kind of smash, crush, something. You have to say something like that. Nowadays, they use the word dafka wound, but wound is a very general word. But both of them mean. Petsua means some kind of, but both, it doesn't say testicles over here.
It's wounded. It doesn't say what. Daka, how is it wounded by being crushed?
So we see not only that. We're going to talk about Petsua is one thing, Daka is another thing. We'll see the Gemara. Each one a different kind of damage. One is a crush, one is a smash. I don't know. But the Mepharshim go that they're two different words, and it doesn't say what was damaged. That's the difficulty over here. The good krus means cut, krus. The third word we do understand on shofcha is going to mean the organ. The Gemara is going to say that it means the fact that it flows, like the word shofech, it spills out. That's going to be talking about the organ itself. Okay, in the pshat. No, that's the dalet kuf hey. This is dalet chaf aleph. And the word dalet chaf is already the shorish. Yeah, but how's it over there?
Not dacha, right?
It's supposed to be with a cuff. It's a cuff, right? It's a cuff, not a chaf.
But it sounds the same.
It sounds the same as daka, right? Right. Patsua daka, it means crushed testicles, but it doesn't mean. I mean that's what it means. But it's not the translation. Kol shnipsu. So now the Rashi says, what is that? But the pasuk says patsua daka. What is that? Kol shnipsu beitzim shelo afilu achas mehen va'afilu nikvu va'afilu nimoku va'afilu chasru. That this psul, this how do you say psul? This invalidation, this disqualification of somebody who is a patsua daka means if his testicles were crushed, and even one of the testicles, and even if they were just punctured, not crushed, just punctured, or nimoku would be some kind of a dissolving, whatever is inside of it, there's something dissolved. I don't have a good word for that. Rotted. Afilu chasru, even if it's missing part of it. Also, it doesn't have to be completely crushed in order to become puzzle. It's puzzle even if it's damaged in any of these ways. Nikru, nimoku, chasru. He's a Tana. Shamati mipicha chachamim b'Kerem v'Yavne. I heard from the sages in Kerem v'Yavne when the sages were in Yavne. If someone only has one testicle, he's still kosher. He's like a Swiss chama. Swiss chama means somebody who is naturally sterile, and he's still kosher. Taisa said the Gemara says yes.
Is it natural or is it? No, it's okay.
Swiss chama seems to be natural. It means it wasn't done by. It wasn't.
He wasn't born that way, no?
He was not. He might have yes been born that way. That's called the Swiss chama. Means he's natural. Means that he was born that way. And we'll talk about later.
What is chama? What's the son?
Physically to him.
And Soros is a sterile.
Right. And he says that a Swiss chama is kosher to marry, is kosher to marry, and somebody only has one testicle. The question chanting would sound like he was born that way. Maybe he'd be kosher because nothing was done to him, nothing physically happened to him, even though he only has one testicle, he would be kosher. Maybe I'm saying it could be the Rishonim say differently, just trying to read the Gemara. Taisha says differently than I'm saying now, but I would imagine the simple words in the Gemara would sound like, since nothing physical was done to him, I'm not sure if the word physical is the right word, but nothing where a dying was done to him, it was something that happened by disease or by birth, so then he's not puzzled. And Taisa has a kasha that even if he's missing both testicles, he should be kosher because nothing was done to him. So let's leave it as a question. I don't know. Swiss chama, it's not the daitach, is he a Swiss chama? That's not what it is. He's not naturally sterile.
Also, where does the kasher come?
The kasher, period. That was the word, right. And then where's the kasha now? So the Swiss chama is not the daitach. Is he a Swiss chama? He's not. You kiss Swiss chama because he puts in the word kaf. It means he's as good as a Swiss chama. Just like a Swiss chama is kosher, he's also kosher. So is he arguing on the Tanakhama or not? I'm not sure. The Tanakhama said that all these things would make him into a patsua dak and his puzzle. And even one Beitza also, that says openly. And he says that if he's missing, so I'm not sure what he does. He says if he doesn't have, why doesn't he have? The words alone would have sounded like he was born like that. That's what I think, but I can't say that's what the words mamish are saying. Taisa seems to say differently, so I just left it at that. That's what the words seem to say. We finished that halacha so far.
Rashi gives us a little bit. Rashi says in the Rashi, Swiss chama salvadaita, or the question, unless Swiss chama b'dei shemayim.
And this is not b'dei shemayim. So this is not b'dei shemayim. Means that how did it happen? How did it happen that he only has? So in this case, Ein lo beit achas does not mean that it happened naturally, or something was born that way, or that some disease happened. I don't know. So maybe, okay, I don't know. Maybe he's arguing that on Tanakama. Tanakama says that one Beitza, it makes him with the Pasua Dak. He says one Beitza does not. I can't say, I'm saying I don't know. These 4 lines of Yishma B'nai Shabbach and Mabrok, I really don't know what he's saying. I'll leave it as a question. I didn't have time to look further. The Gemara now discusses. We said before that Nikev, here it was, it says Nikev, if the testicles were punctured, also is possible. And the Gemara takes it to mean that he can't have children. He can't procreate. That's because the Gemara understands the Psul. A psua daka kushafa is not like a chok, it's not unknown. It's because he can't give birth. His male organ is damaged. So the Gemara says, you're saying that a nikev, if the testicles are punctured, he can't give birth. Who gave the solid? There was a person who climbed the palm tree, and he got damaged. The chaze silu with beitzim and a thorn of one of the parts of the tree. The silo is the thorn, and chazeh would mean somehow that it wounded him. Rashi says nikvu, that it punctured the thorn punctured his testicles as when he was climbing, he fell, whatever, and and a pus came out, some kind of a pus came out. So that means it was a hole over there, punctured, and over, and he still went on. He had children. So you see that he could have children even after his testicles were punctured. The Gemara says, so Shmuel said no, that he can't have children. And if his wife's having children, it's not from him. So go check out where his children are from. It means that this is so definite to the Gemara that he cannot procreate, that if he has children, then it's from a different man. So the Gemara doesn't give in. If it would
That
be,
was from a story.
that was a story. The Kasha was from a story. And he had children. So he says, so the story doesn't prove anything. The story means that the woman was Muzana. And that's not enough proof.
One
What?
even one date is for
That I don't know. I don't know if the Gemara said, if the Gemara did say that one makes him puzzle, which might mean. But the Gemara, but that I'm not sure. That I'm not sure if the Gemara is going even on that point. It could be once we said testicles damage is puzzle, even in the case where he's
I
still.
know from life that they give operations that
Right. Tais has the Kash over here. Tais says something over here that he says we see people that one of their testicles are missing and they still give birth. So Tais learns this is where it is. And he says you're not going to say in all those people when they says they do give birth. So Tais does say that he says, that's the bottom line of Tais. He says, that is possible to give birth even if he's missing one testicle. So I'll leave it to Tais. I didn't go further in the sugya, but the Gemara does say that there was a case where, according to what we are saying, cannot give birth, and somebody said he had children. So we say the children are not yours. So the Gemara does agree that if it will be a question for them, if we see the facts are different, that's a good kasha. But the Gemara says you didn't prove the facts are different. This story didn't show enough. Next Gemara. If he's a Pasua Daka, but it happened by heaven. What does it mean by happened by heaven? So the simple pshat is that happened by birth. If nothing happened, he was born that way. So that makes him kosher. I don't think that it means that he can give birth. I don't think it means that he can't give birth. But nothing was damaged. It was born that way. Rashi even says if it happened something that he, even in a way that it happened after he was born healthy, and afterwards something happened, but it wasn't done physically. Rashi says also it might be considered a Pasua Daka B'dei maybe a disease or something like that. Might also be. The big problem would be if someone's in a car accident or something like that, and he gets damaged, so then he becomes a Pasua Daka and he can't be with his wife anymore. I don't know. I didn't look into the Allah. I'm very interested in what Allah is. Allah shouldn't happen to anybody. Does that mean that they have to end the marriage because he became a Pasua Daka? So I'm not sure. Okay, I don't know enough. He agrees to this halacha that if it's b'dei shemayim, if it happened naturally or from birth, so then he's still kosher. And he says this. It sounds like that in the pasuk because it says the word patsua. It doesn't say hapatsua. Rashi says if it would have said hapatsua, that would have meant hapatsua would have meant from the beginning. I got it wrong. 1 second. Rashi says hapatsua. If it would have said hapatsua, the patsua would have sounded like he was born that way. And the pasuk doesn't say that. So patsua daka means that it happened after he was born. If it would have happened from birth, then it would have been kosher. There's another drash to say this. But Masisa Tana, we don't in a drash a different drash for the same point. Tana, Nema lo yava patsua, v'nema lo yava mamzer. Ma lahal b'dei adam, avkam b'dei adam. The pasuk says right next to each other, they say for a mamzer to marry into a regular Jewish woman, and also patsua daka goes together. Lo yava mamzer, lo yava patsua daka. So since a mamzer is something which happens because people did it, means how did the mamzer come into being? Because they had a illicit union, and that union caused the child to be born. That was something done by man. It wasn't. You could say he was born a mamzer, yes, but how did it happen? Because people involved themselves. So too, a Pasua Daka is only if it was done after he was born. But if it was something that was done without him doing it, then he would be kosher. So both of them agreed to the same point. The question only was what the drasha was, but everybody agrees that a Pasua Daka b'dei shemayim is kosher. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Next Gemara, Amar Rava, Patsua b'kulan, Dach b'kulan, Karus b'kulan. The pasuk says three things: Patsua Daka and the Kush Shafra. And we said that one is talking about the testicles, one is talking about the organ itself. But the Gemara is saying, don't think that Patsua and Daka is only going on the testicles, and Krus, which means cut, is only going on the organ. They're all going on all. Means the Gemara spells it out. Also, besides talking about the testicles and the organ, also it talks about the cord, which connects them, which the Oswald says is called the spermatic cord. And if that's damaged also in any way, there are three kinds of damages mentioned over here. One is patsua, one is dach, and one is krus. Patsua means, I don't know, crushed, and dach is smashed. I don't know which one is which. And krus is cut. Any kind of these three damages that happen to any one of the three parts of the organ, would be the organ itself, the spermatic cord, and the testicles, would make him puzzle. Patsua b'kulan means ben shenif sagid, ben shenif sabeitzin, ben shenif suchute beitzin. No difference if the organ or the testicles or the spermatic cord were smashed, puzzle. And the next one, Dach Bekulan, Ben Shenidach Hagid, Ben Shenitcho Beitzim, Ben Shenitcho Chuti Beitzim, all three things. The organ, the testicles, or the spermatic cord, if they were nidach, crushed. And the last thing, krus, also Bekulan. Ben Shenichus Hagid, Ben Shenichus Beitzim, Ben Shenichus Chuti Beitzim. No difference if the organ itself was cut, or the testicles were cut, or the spermatic cord was cut. All of them will make them puzzle. And that seems to be the halacha. Nobody argues on that. That was also the halacha. Next Gemara. How do we know it's talking about the genital area at all? Who says what it's talking about? It doesn't say openly. But Daka doesn't say anything. It just says smashed and crushed. And the word krus, it says over there, cut shafcha. Shafcha means the one that spills out. So what does all that mean? So the Gemara is a lot of times the Gemara does this not because we didn't know. It's like the Gemara says also, how do you know that that mila is supposed to be on the organ? It doesn't say. It just says to cut. Well, the word mila means to cut. How do you know where to cut? So of course it's Torah Sheval Peh. That's the oral law. That's no question. And the other Gemara is like that also. How do you know shchita? It says to slaughter. How do you know slaughter by the neck? Who says? It means in the pasuk you don't find this. So the Gemara talks about, of course, it's oral law, but the Gemara finds a rem as a hint in the pasuk also. Many like that. The Gemara talks about how do you know that a Pri Yitzhak is an esrog? It says take a beautiful fruit. Maybe it's a pear. How do you know that it's the esrog? So of course it was given in the Sinai. When Moshe Rabbeinu came down, he said Pri Yitzhak. It means esrog. But the Gemara, what's that? Yeah, they got 5 rushes over there. Those rushes were found 5,000, 2,000 years later. It's not after that Moshe Rabbeinu came and said the drasha. He said Pri Yitzhak means an esrog. You want to figure out where it says it in the word? Figure it out. So the Gemara does that. So the Gemara does these kind of things. How do you know that Psuah Daka means in the genital area? They also mock maybe it means that his head got crushed. It means crushed, smashed. How do you know? Since it doesn't say that the next generation, at other ones it says Amoni, Mawavi, Mitzri, Adomi, all those, it talks about how many generations is you're not allowed to marry. So here it doesn't say anything about generations. It must be because he doesn't have any more generations, because he can't give birth. The fact that it doesn't say that it's possible for many generations is because he doesn't have any more generations, because he can't procreate. But the Gemara says that wouldn't be a proof. The maybe he really could have children. He's talking about he got a smashed head, and he's not allowed to marry, but his children, he could have children, but they're not usher. Just because his grandfather had a smashed head doesn't mean he's going to be possible to marry. So that wouldn't be a proof at all. So the Gemara says in Uteris, this is a hekesh, as Levi Yaakov said, that it says Psuah Daka and a Krush Shafcha. So the pasuk compares them. The fact that the psukim are said together, so they're saying it's the same thing. And the Krush Shafcha, we do know that it means by the organ. So too the Psuah Daka is also talking about the organ. It also is talking about that's in the genital. And that's next. Who says? And Gemara asks the next question. Who said that the Krush Shafcha is talking about the genital area? The word that says that it spills out. So the other parts of the body that spill out, his mouth also spills out. His mouth also could spit out saliva. So how do you know that it's talking about only the organ? The answer is that it spills. So Rashi says that in the mouth, when he lets saliva, it doesn't spill out. He has to spit it out. It doesn't fall out by itself. The organ over there, it comes by itself. But by the mouth, the saliva that comes out is going to be that he spits it out.
That's not drooling?
Right.
No, I'm saying drooling is mammalian.
But that's not, probably doesn't happen by that. That's not a regular person who's healthy, his mouth doesn't drool. The ema mechotmo, by the nose sometimes does show, it spills without any kind of spitting out. A runny nose, whatever it might be, of blood. And mi ksiv bishafuch, krushafcha ksiv, mi shali de krisa shofech, shali de krisa in a shofech. So the Gemara is saying now a little different light that we took until now, that it doesn't mean that that's what the organ is when it's healthy. When it's healthy organ, it doesn't spill out. But when it's cut, then it spills out. So the nose spills out even when it's healthy. Means he can say everything's intact and he has a runny nose. But the organ, when it's healthy, it doesn't spill. But if it's cut, then it does spill. Means elamakalef, means that the flow, the flow that's going to be from urine or from semen, then it doesn't just spill out. But if it's cut, if the organ is cut, then it is going to spill. It's not going to be coming out with a flow. That's what the pasuk is talking about. Krush shofcha means they krisa shofech. Since it was cut, that's why now it's spilling only and it's not ejaculating. Lafuki hai the idividi shofechu, that the nose, it always is spilling. And maybe when it's healthy and intact, also it's going to spill. That was the drasha to say, we know that the Krush Shafcha is the organ, and then we said that the Chatzua Daka, because it's in the same pasuk, it's also talking about the general area. The Masisa Tana, a different drasha, how do you know that it's talking about the organ? Also similar, we said before, that the juxtaposition, juxtaposition of both of the psukim about next to a mamzer, that it says the pasuk of Suadaka next to a mamzer, ma'alahala and bosa mokam, avkan bosa mokam. By the mamzer, what causes a mamzer? Marital relations. So that marital wasn't marital, but the fact that there was relations that caused the mamzer to come. So too, we're talking about something that has to do with the genital area also. So that's the halacha. We just went into the drash, but Suadaka Kushafcha is talking about the testicles and the organ. New Gemara, also about the subject about the Kushafcha, and we said before that Nikev, even if it was punctured, also it causes him to become a puzzle. And before we spoke about that testicles were punctured, now we're talking about if the organ was punctured. So the Mishnah says something about this. Mishnah spoke about if the organ was cut. And the Mishnah ended off to say that it depends if there's a Torah left. A Torah means what we call in English the corona. It's also the same word in Hebrew. A Torah means a crown. And the corona means the tip. The fleshy tip of the organ is called the corona. And the Mishnah says as long as there's some part of that left, even if it was cut, but some part is that left, then it's still kosher. It's only going to be called the cut organ only if the organ itself was cut past the corona. But if the corona only was cut, it's still kosher. You still can have children, it's still kosher. Now we're talking about if it was punctured. If it was punctured, lamata me'atar, shekenegdo lamala me'atar. Here was a question if it was punctured. So we're going to say the same thing, that just like by the testicles, we said that if it's punctured, it's puzzle. Also, if the organ is punctured, but not in the corona. The corona is punctured, wouldn't be a problem. I'm talking about that the organ itself was punctured. So here the question is, what if the puncture is, it seems from the way the Mepharshim explained, it's only possible if it's punctured through and through. If it does be punctured in, but it didn't come out the other side, it wouldn't be puzzle. So it's punctured through and through. And the question is, if it will be in the corona, it's kosher. If it will be in the organ itself, it's puzzle. And the question is, what if it's one side it came in on one side, it came in the corona, and the other side it came out where there's already the organ. In one point, the puncture on one side was in the crown. The matam yatar means it's in the corona already, which is still makes him kosher. But on the other side, when it came out, is already the malam yatar, which is already the organ itself. Is that puzzle or not? So this Amora thought that is kosher since it wasn't on both sides. Only one side was in a place which is the sensitive part. It has to be that the Torah, it should be in the corona on both sides. Any part of the Torah, if it's not going to be in the Torah on both sides of the puncture, it's also going to be puzzled. So if the puncture was on one side, even that was already on the organ itself, it also makes him puzzle.
So again, the Rabbi Shimon Levi, a Torah kol shmi akeves.
Means you have to have a Torah on all sides. It has to be that it's only in that Torah. If it would have any part which was not in that Torah is already not kosher. That Torah is the part that's kosher. The corona is the part where it's kosher. So kol shmi akeves means that it has to be that the corona was the part that was punctured in any place. But if any place was not going to be the corona, then it's going to be puzzle already. It goes back to the Mishnah, which is talking about the cut organ. And we said that if it's cut in a place which is only the corona, so it's still kosher. Only if we went past that, then it's we stopped about the puncture. Now going back to the Mishnah, which speaks about being cut. The Mishnah says that it's kosher as long as he has a malochut, even a malochut. The hair, how do you say a malochut? Malochut. Yeah, I guess a malochut asira. I forgot if the Mishnah uses the word asira or not. A hair's breadth. The smallest amount of a Torah, as the Mishnah say. The Mishnah is chut asira. Even a hair's breadth, the smallest amount of the corona means that there was a little bit corona left is kosher. But the question is, does it have to mean the whole area? Means on the whole surface, the whole corona was cut. But there's a mashu of corona left. Does it have to be on the whole surface, or even rove would be good enough? Am I explaining it? That the corona was cut, but a mashu was left, but not a mashu only on one side. It has to be surely at least rove of the area of the cut.
Circumference.
Not the circumference, but more the area. Like the circumference is only the circle around. Right. We're talking about the area. That the area has to be that fleshy. Let's call it the flesh. The flesh of the corona has to be either on the whole, either on the robe or on the whole. Maybe the whole surface has to be. When we look at it, we would see that the whole surface is covered with a mashahu of the flesh of the corona is left. That's one side. That's kula. Yeah, only a little bit, but a little bit of the thickness, but it has to be on the whole surface, or rove of the surface will also be good enough. That's the most question. But malo chush amru al panei kula or al panei ruba is good enough. It has to, in order to be kosher, it has to be that the whole surface is left with some of the corona, or as long as the majority was left with corona, it's enough, even though the minority doesn't have. Amalei Rabba to swallow Ravina malo chut al panei ruba. So his question the gears over here. Our Girsa says Ruba, that's how the Girsa Kula. But we go with our Girsa that as long as his robe is good enough. But Klapi Resha, only if it's on the top, means the top part of means you can talk about the robe. If you talk about Kula, so then there's nothing that has to be the whole, has to be everything. But if you talk about robe, the majority, so you can talk about the majority on the top, on the upper half or the bottom half, which part? Is one part more sensitive than the other? More crucial, more significant. So it says that it has to be on the top part. The fleshy part, I guess depends how the organ is built. Why is it so? But it seems that there's more sensitive part on the top. So on the upper part, higher up towards on the top part.
It's away from the body.
Not away. No, we're talking about towards the bottom. Now, we're not talking about far and close. We're talking about up and on top. The person is standing, so the top of his organ and the bottom of his organ.
Oh,
So we're saying that rove, when you look at from towards the body, so you'll see only rove is there. Minority is missing, but it depends where the minority is. If it's going to be on the top part of the organ, higher up, so then no good. You have to have rove, but the rove has to be on the top part. The bottom minority could be missing, but the top minority cannot be missing. Next Gemara, Amr Rav Huna. When the last narrow lines. Here the Gemara talks about two kinds of damages to the organ. And it had what they called is we called here a kakulmus. One is called the kulmus, one is called kimarze. So the way Rashi explains it, it could be the word kulmus is like we would say a pencil. That's how we would call a pencil, which would mean a kulmus doesn't mean a pencil. Kulmus means like they had like a sofa's feather, the feather or reed, what?
Quill pen.
A quill pen, right? So the point is that it gets thinner as it, like for our purposes, we could say a pencil also, that we have a pencil that's on all, tapers off, that in all sides. Really, the muscle will be something which pencil will be a better muscle. That you have the organ get thinned out as it gets further away from the body, so it got thinned out. Like a pencil, like a sharpened pencil. So it means that area was carved out, cut away in a way that it became thinner and thinner. That's and
quite the corona, the atara.
so right. So very nice, very good. The Gemara at the end of the page is going to say this, that we're not talking about the corona because the corona could be missing completely with a mashu.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about it's already the organ. We're past the corona, but to the organ now. And then the question will be that you have to have the corona still. How are we going to? So the Mishnah seems to say everything depends if there's going to be the corona or not. I didn't get to the details of this, but the Gemara says there's some issue over here that depends if the part that's left, not in it seems to be past the corona. That's what the Gemara is going to say at the bottom of the page. I didn't get clarity yet, but it seems that we're talking about not the part of the corona, we're talking about past the corona, the Gemara is going to say.
So it's the body.
Towards the body, and it's already the organ, and there's a difference which way it was severed. There's a protruding, like this case I'll call it a protrusion, that it's cut away, but it gets thinner away on the further part, like a pencil, like a sharpened pencil. And the other way is marzev, the much of the words are marzev, which the word marzev really means like a pipe, a gutter, something like that. And the point would be that it's indented. That's all the Gemara wants for the mushal. There's something, the opposite of the protrusion will be that it's indented. That carving away, whatever was carved away, cut, or that'll be the worst. That'll be the word. Concave and what's the opposite?
Convex.
Those are the two words. Which is which?
Concave.
Indented. Concave. Right. So that's how much the Gemara. If the Gemara would use our terminology instead of saying kulmus and marzev, it would say concave and convex. So right, indented.
Like a cave, right?
Okay, going in.
So that would be the case of the marzev. The marzev is the mushal for concave.
Oh, it is?
I think so.
The tapered up is good.
No, that's the kulmus. That's the kulmus. The kulmus is the,
That's concave.
It's sharper at the end.
oh, so that I'm listening to the linguists. What is concave and what is
I don't know.
convex?
We got it.
Okay.
Concave is an indentation.
Indentation. That's the case. Okay, so we got it. So the kulmus is the convex and the marzev is the concave.
Vector point, no, it's an X.
The culmus, it tapered off like a pencil.
Yes, that's the
It
convex.
tapered off before it got to the corona.
The corona is missing. The corona is away.
And as you get towards.
And
where
now
corona
the
used
organ
to be,
itself-
it
And now the corona is not there. It's not there. And now on the organ itself, it was also damaged in a way that it's convex. I got it. And the other case would
It's
be
when it goes smaller and smaller.
right.
And the other way it goes bigger and bigger.
Which would mean that it's the indentation, right? Good. So we're saying the same thing.
Somebody filed it, somebody filed.
What is
Bothering me,
yes.
because indenting to me sounds like something's being taken away. It's getting bigger, so how's it being taken away?
Indented would mean that it was what it was.
It's recent.
And even the inner part, as you go closer, that part is indented. Nothing's added on to him. Things are missing, but the things that are missing could be missing in a way that the result looks concave or the result looks.
Okay.
So now we have machlokas. Which one is better? Which one is worse? The problem is that if the corona is missing, so it's finished already. And it seems not. The Gemara then is going to say if the corona is there, nothing to talk about it. That's all. Everything's good. So we're talking about the corona is missing, and still whatever's left in the organ itself, there's a difference which way it was damaged. Is it convex or concave? So Rafuna says that pulmos kashera kamaze psula. That convex is kosher and concave is puzzle. Why? When it's concave, what's the problem? That air is able to enter into the cave, into the indentation, and that causes that he shouldn't be, that the semen shouldn't be able to develop in a way or not be able to be heated in a way that it should be able to do its job. The opposite. That the case of the concave is kosher, he'd be a kosher, he's not a psula doctor, he's not a kushafka, and komus is the problem. Why? This has friction, this doesn't have friction. So Rashi explains, I'm saying Rashi, maybe the other pshatim, Rashi says that when he has relations, in order that the semen should be ejaculated, it has to be that there's friction from the body, from his organ to the woman. So in the case of the concave, there's no lack of friction. But in the case of the convex, over there, there's no friction. The case where it got thinned out, over there, there's no friction, and it's not getting stimulated. It won't get stimulated in order to ejaculate. So he's the one who can't have children. So they have opposite shittas. One says this is good, this is not good. He says the opposite. They're arguing which one is kosher, which one is puzzle. Rava takes the side of Avuna, the first opinion, that says that the concave is the problem because high shalad ba'avira, like we said. That the problem is that when the air gets in over there, so it's not that stops him from being able to ejaculate in a proper way. And imishim gridusa, and the problem was because there's no friction by the pulmus. He's saying that the convex. So he's saying that the concave is not good and the convex is good. So he had a problem that there's no friction against the case where it thinned out, so there's no friction against the woman. It gives a much of a spigot that you, or any kind of like a cork, whatever it might be, that the beginning is thin, and then as you stick it in, it gets more thicker. So the same thing, even though the spritz, even though the end of it is thinned out in a way that it's convex, and it's not going to have friction on that point in the point, but the rest of the organ is still thick, and over there there'll be the convection, there'll be the friction, and it'll be able to ejaculate properly. He says everything's kosher. Both of them are kosher. Till now we had one is kosher, one is posel, and one way the other way. And he says everything's kosher. But the question I still have is, who said this? Ravina said in the name of Mar Zutra, in the name of our Papa, that both of them are kosher. But he had a question: are we talking about in the corona area or not in the corona area? That is the question. So they told him, who's this Mirema? Ravina told Mirema. Here it was. Amalei Ravina the Mirema. So he asked him, which one are we talking about? In the corona area or past the corona? The corona. So he said, Pshita Torah. Surely we're talking about in the area of the organ itself, not the corona. These are talking about the corona. I feel the Nichas Nami, it's kosher completely. Even if it would have been completely cut off, that wouldn't be a problem. As long as there's a hair's breadth left. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the organ itself. So the boy says, definitely he's right. And the one who's asking the question wasn't really a question. Ravina just wanted to mix him up. He wanted to confuse him. He's giving him a test. A lot of times they have down in the Gemara that the Rebbe asks a question in order to see if he knows what he's talking about. That he should to confuse him. To confuse him.
Chadude understand. Shibusha, I don't understand.
No, it doesn't mean that its purpose is to, it means you mix them up in order to see, and that's what he's talking about. The
The
chidur is the
best
same.
is to bring out the best. of
That's
them,
what he's
not
doing.
to- Not
Yeah.
to show that he's got.
But you only bring out the best by saying something which doesn't make sense and see that he's gonna cop, that he's gonna get the idea. I will have a Moshe Machasia, yes,
Michael, these are from Matamet Torah,
which means the corona and further,
away from the body.
right, which is, so I said, if you even if it would have been cut also it's kosher.
I don't know what's cut, the gid.
Not the gid, no, it means nechos agid means that's also called part of the gid in general. So it means that part is not significant at all as far as, so must be that it's talking about past dog. And now we're going to say a chiddush, even though it's past the corona, and we would have said in the Mishnah that nothing's not good because there's no chotasar anymore. Still it's kosher, so I don't get it exactly. I'm lost in this Gemara. That same way the Gemara says that this is surely kosher, so I would say this is surely possible. If it's not in the corona area, it's already on the organ, so how can you say that's kosher in certain instances? So I didn't get clarity yet. And the Gemara ends off, whoever they have a b'masa machasya, there was a case, somebody had a problem. Shafye, Rashi says, the case was he was concave. Rashi, I'll say what Rashi says. Rashi says that even though we said both of them are kosher, we had already two opinions. Kolmas is kosher, Maziv is possible. Maziv is kosher, Kolmas is possible. And the last opinion was everything is kosher, Ben ke Kolmas, Ben ke Hilchasa, everything is kosher. But this Gemara is not going like this. The Rashi knows this last Gemara is going back to the opinion of Avuna, that a Maziv is possible, that if it's a concave, it's possible. So he made an operation. He made the concave into a convex. He cut away more.
Did plastic surgery.
He did an operation to make the concave convex, and he said concave to make convex, and he made him kosher. Ad kan. End of the day today.
Where did you say that there was an operation?
Doesn't say that. Shafye.
Shafia.
What does the word shafye mean?
What is Shafye?
He filed it down.
It says whittled down here, like a
Whittled
quilt.
down, filed down.
I see. That's the beginning of the sentence. Right? That little bit.
There was a story in Masam Bachasya that Ma'bar Rashi Shafye, like a kolmas, and he made him kosher. So one thing we get out of the Gemara is to be thankful and grateful for all of our health.
Wow.
And
And you see that Hashem made a miracle, the way we're built.
yeah, miracle of miracles,
Not normal.
miracles of miracles. Any atheists?
Yeah, because tomorrow night, we want to meet the
Is it still doable? It's still too close, or make it not further, or still keep it
Let's still keep it.
9:15,
Try one more week.
9:15, and then you have to push it.
Well,
Okay,
30, that's it. That's
okay.
that'll be it.
okay, Ashiko, thank you.
Shabbos now is 7:01, and the latest you get to 7:11.
So not much more. Okay. That's correct, everybody. No, I didn't go further.
So we said.
Good job, everybody.
9:15.
9:15. If okay, fine, double no then. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ashiko. Thank you. Good job, everybody.
You can do Rabbi Thomas to make it right now.